Helene?
Welcome to
They
the
said something.
4 o'clock meeting of the Westport Landing Commission. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. At the table today, we have on my left Commissioner Wendy
Wendy
Henderson. And on my right, Commissioners and Town Treasurer Extraordinaire
And tax collector.
and Tax Collector Sue Brayton. And we also have Richard Brewer from the Select Board, who is our liaison person, which has been of great assistance. So we appreciate your attendance, sir. I'm going to skip to number 3 for a moment, just in case people are tuning in a little late out there in TV land. Notice this is commercial-free. Headlanding mowing. I have noticed that there are sections that are not getting mowed, and at the last meeting that you were not at, we talked about maybe we should never mow those sections again and just let them grow. And my concern about that was, well, is this going to become a dead hay field that then is a fire hazard? What are the species that are growing there? Is this really better for the environment, et cetera? So I haven't taken a look at it, but I know that you have sort of a background in some of those horticultural specialties and interest.
Yeah, I noticed they're not doing between the Historic Society building, the old school, and Drift Road, but it's really...
That wasn't in their contract, actually.
Oh, okay, it's really gravelly soil. That's ours, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's,
Well, also the lawn in front of, I mean, some of the property in front of all those homes is actually ours,
Right.
too.
right, right, but the homeowners, for the most part, take care of that. That section, it's really gravelly soil, so it's not growing very much at all. It's just grasses that maybe once a year mowing it would be a good idea, just to stop trees and shrubs and things from coming up. Because I think the neighbors would probably take care of it if shrubs and things started to come up to retain their view. But the area over on the watershed side, they do less frequently, I guess.
What I have seen is that south of the slipway, that big rectangle south of the slipway, and then there's a berm that goes up. They do the berm, they do the top of the berm, they weed whack around the benches a little, but down low, if it's real wet when they happen to be there, they seem to do that less, and particularly the far end of it less. On the
This
other
most
hand,
southern end of it, yeah.
yeah, and similarly, across the water from the far southern end, there's a whole section that, kind of a triangle there that seems to not get mowed as much.
It's probably because it's too wet, because it's flooding on a regular basis now, and I appreciate that they're not taking our town equipment through salt water on a regular basis,
This
you know?
is no
that's-
longer town equipment.
Oh, yeah,
This is private
right.
pay.
Well, they don't want to put, private pay doesn't want to put their equipment through salt water either.
And
you
they
know?
get stuck. And
Yeah,
so I just think we ought to be thinking ahead a little bit to next year. And so if you could take a look at it and think about, well, what's growing?
the
and,
wetland itself needs work. That's not our department, though, right?
It's like a lot of things in this town.
The
It's
storm
unclear.
basin, I mean.
It's
yeah.
unclear a lot of things, whose responsibility it is. But I believe that, well, I know that 2 or 3 years ago, the Highway Department, with its team of summer hires, did an enormous amount of work in there and took out a lot of olive trees and other kinds of things, and it
Yeah.
looked way better. And actually, this year, there were amazing flowers in there.
Yeah.
It was really pretty.
There's a fair amount of native stuff in there, but there's some invasive, the olives are coming back to some extent, and that requires probably half a day's work for a few guys.
Yeah, I know,
No.
maybe it could be an Eagle Scout project. I know the highway department, I can mention it to them as maybe a winter thing.
Yeah, or maybe even talk to the Eagle Scout chief, whoever that is, whoever's taking care of that program now, and see if they might be
Right.
able to entice an Eagle Scout. That's a good idea.
Yep.
Because the watershed would work with them to define what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, if you could at least, and if it's helpful, Chris Leonard's wife is very excited about species of grasses and things, to take a look at, well, what is coming up there? Because my concern, again, is if it's just, it's some kind of grass that then is just gonna fall over and be matted and dead. Ugh. Or if it's gonna just stand up and be dry and become a fire hazard, not so good, although there's nothing near it that would really burn. So, could you do that for us? And I think somebody from the watershed some time ago suggested the idea of allowing grasses to get higher in the 2 to 3 foot, say, buffer zone, I'll call it, along the walls, along the river, with the idea that then the plants would take up more of the pollutants that wash in from the road, and maybe the geese would be discouraged. I don't know. So anyhow, I just thought that might be Brenda. It's not. And I have mixed feelings about aesthetically how that would look if we just let the grass grow everywhere.
Yeah,
Right, down towards the south end where it doesn't get much use, as much use anyway, maybe one thing.
would be different than
Yeah.
the rest of it. And also the concern about people deciding to go look at the water anyway, even though there's tall grass, and falling into some of those holes that are still remaining in the wall.
Oh, right. A note, chase down the wall guy. Okay. Thank you. I know some time ago there was poison ivy growing along there. I haven't heard reports of poison ivy recently.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed any, but I've only been down there once this year.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, just as a curiosity,
Yes.
this is the head of Westport,
Mm-hmm.
and in front of the building, the grass is high. Is that for ecological reasons,
In front of what building?
the WRWA?
That's
This is the
their
head.
choice. It's their land to, it's our land, but they rent it from us. And their intent has been to plant a number of pollinator species that come up and look the way it looks. That's what they're doing because they think they're trying to promote the idea of planting pollinator plants around. So,
Okay, I was just curious.
yep, that's why that looks the way it looks. It's not a real dense pollinator garden, it's sort of a spread out one.
It sometimes will get better over the years as
Yeah, I
things,
think it will,
it will
yeah.
fill in more.
Yep,
Yep.
yeah, if you saw it at my house, I have half an acre of that. You can't even walk through it, it's so dense, but it's also, it looks a little trashy at times of year, and then I burn it every spring and mow it, but it's a different kind of deal.
Yeah, you have
what
better
they're doing.
soils than they have too. You have,
I don't
yeah,
know.
they have gravel.
It's on top of a septic system.
Oh, that's good soil. It's the best.
Some of it is. It's like a dead hayfield.
So just so I understand, what we're talking about here in the mowing, that does not include that area.
Correct.
right.
It includes, and it does not include right around the kayak shop. I mean, I have encouraged the kayak shop to contract with the same people we do, but they are responsible for their mowing. because I didn't want to be responsible for
Yeah,
banging into kayaks or whatever, and they lease the land, and they get a good deal on it, so they take care of it.
okay.
Jumping back up to number 2 on the agenda, this is my regular message about we are one landing commissioner short. So if anybody has an interest in being on this fun commission, you can put your name in with the select board, and they will decide whether you can fill out the remaining term. So it would only be a commitment until April, when there will be an election, at which point you could you could become a candidate, and you'd probably win, because there's usually only one candidate per position. So, consider it. Item 4, overnight parking. Turns out to be pretty complicated. We had an issue with someone parking every night on Hicks Bridge Road at the head landing, and a neighbor complained.
At the
And-
Hicks Bridge landing?
I'm sorry, at the head landing,
Oh, at the head landing.
the head
okay.
landing. And then at one point, there was a tent that was there overnight. And there was concern expressed by a couple of neighbors about, ooh, what's happening here? And so I have spoken with the town administrator, and haven't completely figured out how much signage we would need to put up if this starts to become a problem again next year. The person is no longer doing it, but I do think it's an issue that we ought to be able to stay ahead of. Relevant to that, there are regulations that the Landing Commission has that were probably set, I don't know, 80 years ago or something, about the fines for transgressing our various regulations. And there is a fine for overnight parking that I guess we have to go to the select board or town meeting to get that fine raised from the current fee of $5 per night to something higher.
That's a very reasonable campground fee, $5 a night.
How old was that original bylaw?
Yeah, right?
Pretty old.
Yeah.
So,
$5 was a stiff fine in those days, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
right.
so
What was that practice stopped this summer just because it got stopped, or did someone ask the person to stop parking and camping there?
the neighbor asked the police said, and they got, when they called the police about it, they got 2 different messages, two different answers about was there overnight parking or not. And then when it got pushed a little further, the message they got from the police was, well, there's no signage, so I can't really ticket them. And it's not clear, I need to speak with the police and perhaps the highway department about how many signs would we have to put up in order for it to be clear. Could we put one at either end of the area saying no parking between signs, or, and I think it's something that the town of Westport needs to be thinking about anyhow, just for the future, because
Yeah, because that's at the head landing this year. It could be somebody parking overnight next year at the Hicks Bridge Landing or Adamsville or any other location.
right, like on a street near you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certainly complications because already many property owners put their cars in the town layout already. And I think some of the people from East Beach actually have lease agreements with the town in order to use the town layout, because they've lost so much waterfront that a lot of the houses on the south side are actually using the town layout, the side of the road to park regularly. So I think there's some complications that need to be figured out about how we would enforce that, and I just don't know how it works. But apparently they're gone for the season at the moment.
Well, on this issue, I mean, this is only peripherally a landing commission issue.
Mhm.
It's a town issue. You're bringing it to the attention, we are, to the select board, or at least eventually, or immediately with
Mhm.
the town administrator. But it's one that's a little tricky because from the point of view of the landing commission, it's an issue, but it's not really a huge issue. It's-
Right, we're
but
just-
there are bigger implications from this,
Oh, yeah.
which are town issues. So I think the landing commission is good to make it known that we observe this
Mhm.
and something ought to be done about it eventually, thoughtfully, and all that. But, this is one of these things, it's not a problem when it's just percolating, but then it could become a large problem.
Right. And we're trying to be responsive to our neighbors who
Yeah.
are concerned. I think, and certainly, it's also been, I mean, I've heard that it's becoming an issue on the south end of Main Road as more and more people who have homes there have lost parking in their backyards because their backyards have become septic systems, and so they're now parking on the street, and so there's problems there too. So it may be something that has regional differences as far as where parking, as the town wrestles with where can you allow this, where do you not allow it. So, but that'll be for the town and the select board to figure out, not us. But I would like us to figure out at least some way of updating the fines. So that probably means we need to get on the agenda for the, I don't know, like were you on the beach committee when the fee increased to $35 or $40 a year, whatever it is? Is that a select board?
Well, the select board, I was on it for the most recent increase.
So the select board sets the
Yeah.
fees.
Yeah,
So we would so we would research what the fees are now,
yeah.
look at what other towns charge for similar transgressions, and then make recommendations to you.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah, I don't think it's a town meeting issue.
It's just, okay, good. That makes it easier. See if I can get on.
Well, I'm not certain about that. We
Yeah.
should check that out.
All right. Number 5, Hicksbridge Landing update. There's no additional information on that.
We're not proceeding with engineering right now, right?
Correct. We're waiting.
No reason
but
to.
There is concern about waiting because certain funds go away if you don't use them. So I am going to be actively pursuing them again. The planning board, the town planner was trying to get in touch. I am going to also try to get in touch and figure out where we are with them.
Yeah.
It's unclear what's going on. Item 6, they have not called me. Like a month ago, they said, oh, they're half painted soon. I have not heard back from them. But I've been really busy with some other things, so maybe they're done and they just haven't called me. I don't know. But I think it's still worth certainly installing all of them. And to back up to the issue about the parking at our new grassy area on Hicksbridge Road, even if there's no parking, I think we can put a sign there. And I think it's okay to put the bench there. And if people want to ride their bikes, they could do that, or they could walk over from having parked at Handy House or wherever else they might park.
Yeah, the only thing is, because you can pull off the road there and park, I think possibility of people using it, especially if there's a sign there that says somebody, some such and such landing.
Yeah, well, there's a sign that says no parking.
Okay, as long as that sign's
Yeah,
there.
sign's there.
Yep.
You okay with putting the bench in, putting the sign up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they can still get a Hicks Bridge permit,
Yep,
park on the other side of the
Right.
bridge and walk over.
right, or ride their
You know,
bikes.
Or ride their bikes, or, yeah.
And I will also get the highway department to try to cut down the brush there to make the visibility better based on
Yes.
what the police said.
Yeah, that's just a bunch of invasive stuff anyway there, what's remaining.
Yep. So we're sort of right into item 7, bench and parking. Huh. So I don't think we need a vote on just going ahead with the sign and the bench. We've already agreed to do that, right?
Right. I believe we did.
Okay. And I will speak with Highway about doing this. Looking at the concern of Sergeant Mello about safety, he seemed to, his largest concern, if you've had a chance to read the second to last paragraph, was people who would be turning around.
Yeah,
Which, and sort of thinking about this, I appreciate their interest in safety. This will be town resident parking. And realistically, I would expect most of the people who are going to park there are going to come down 88 or Drift Road, because east of there is mostly Dartmouth. I would expect most of our users are going to be coming the other ways. And so they're going to have to either somehow go down to the landing, turn around and come back, or throw a quick U-turn in the road to park, which will be easier if we move the rocks in. It had occurred to me that the signage could say parallel parking only, but if we removed some of the rocks, so you could actually, if you were, here's the car, rock, rock. So that if you're going this way, but you want to exit going that way, you could actually back between the rocks and then come back out this way. That would address this concern a little bit.
As long as people know enough to do that.
yeah.
Well, but there's all kinds of unsafe things in the world, and
The way it is right now, I wouldn't even try doing a U-turn there because of the coming down the hill coming from the west, traveling towards the east. There's not a good enough visibility to know that you can get your car around. I mean, unless you have a little smart car or something, I think that it would take too long. I remember being there. I stopped there to take a look at the whole thing, and I needed to go back to the east, but I went up and turned around in the Drift Road intersection. Is that legal? I don't know, but I did, and there was no one coming.
right, so it seems to me, I
Wouldn't
mean,
even consider that.
I mean, we'll see what the select board thinks when I meet with them on October 7th. But it seems, and I will try to speak with Officer Mello about this idea. Certainly, we could potentially move the, roll the rocks in, instead of rolling them in 3 or 4 feet, we could roll them in 8 feet, so that as you were exiting, if you were turning around, you'd have that much more
Yeah.
room to kind of complete your U-turn. But this, to me, still seems worth pursuing. It's not, I realize.
Yeah, I would talk to him and see what he thinks the best situation would be.
I don't know what the select board would do, but have we, in view of this police report, which will, I think, cause the select board to hesitate,
Mhm.
there might be discussion about can a parking area be constructed there? Obviously, it would be small, and it would take a piece of the landing, so cars could go in and out in the, I call it, a normal way. Suggesting it should be, that if nothing else, that's safer, but there are downsides to doing that. Is that worthy of discussion here in your committee?
That did occur to me, that basically you could turn in, you could move the rocks closer to the road even at that point, and then you could turn between the rocks and then turn facing west, and you could just line up however many cars would fit there, I suppose.
It's not that big an area. I don't think we need to accommodate 7 cars or anything. It's,
Yeah, I mean, I think at most you're gonna have 2, maybe
it-
3 at the most.
maybe couple people meet up or something there, or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if, I mean, as Dick was saying, like if we were to put a parking area, that area where there's the dead trees and the vines and so forth, I mean, if we were to,
At the
Real-
west end?
the stuff that brush,
East End. I think you're talking about closer to the bridge, right?
yes.
Yeah.
You know, even if we cut down that tree, I mean, like you said, we looked at it and stuff, if somewhere near there, we could manage to, as we cut down the invasive species and stuff that's there, right there at the road.
If you do too much, you're going to require conservation approval.
Yeah,
You're certainly riverfront there, so.
yeah, we are.
So I think minimal, so that we don't really have to go through conservation, unless we see that it's used enough that
Right.
it warrants a real parking lot or something, then it's worth pursuing it.
Sure.
I would think.
Yeah. I know at the east end, there's a big drainage ditch there.
Yes, way down here, yeah.
Right, but well, okay, I will try to
Look at it again.
speak with Mr. Mello and see what he thinks, either of my idea about being able to back between the rocks.
Yeah, I think before we go to the select board, we'd want to know,
Mhm.
make sure we're clear on
About those
his agreement of, yeah, what's proposed.
Well, could you talk about also the option of putting a parking area on the west side of the landing?
The west,
Yeah, in other words, you come down toward Hicks Bridge, you come to the property, and it's immediate. You would have, park that section, that
you
west.
park on the other side of the road, you mean?
No, no,
Up closer to the leased property?
yeah,
That's kind of what I think that's what I was suggesting, where you would be facing, the cars as they pull in would sort of be facing west.
See, and my thought was if we went down closer this way, you're further from that curve. So as cars come around, it still gives you time to get in and out, you know, a little bit. The further you are down here, you have more view from up here, whereas if you're sitting right here and you're looking, you still have that curve there.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have a feeling, though, that given the amount of feet you need to turn around, although people could just be driving on the grass, too. I mean, it's not necessarily have to do a lot here. So we'll see,
Right.
we'll look at
Right.
various options and
yeah, that's my point. Look at, not just
turning
one
radiuses
side.
and stuff. Yep,
Play around to look what seems to make sense, what the police would think about that.
yep.
It's safety, it's convenience.
Mhm.
I don't like the idea of turning around between the rocks. That doesn't sound safe to
Back
me
in
at all.
between rocks. Yeah, okay.
It's
All right.
just another consideration that might
appreciate
come up
that.
with the
Yep.
select board.
Okay. Our secretary is not here, so we have no minutes to approve. Is there other business not anticipated at time of posting?
Not really. I did check into, we were talking at the last meeting about the right-of-way down the point. There was the option of getting a bike rack.
Right.
And then we had mentioned and possibly putting it in, there was some discussion about the right-of-way that goes on the other property.
Leach property.
Right. And that right-of-way is very specific, that nothing can be placed on it. No gates, fences, or other structures, temporary or permanent. No vehicles may be placed on the public access area. So,
So,
absolute,
so no bike rack down there.
right.
So,
It's for
I'm-
the exercise by the public of free on-foot passage only.
and what is the public allowed to do once they pass on foot?
It's basically to view the area and I think maybe do some fishing or something. It's to access for fishing and so,
So, is the wharf then public property?
not the entire wharf. No, there's a plan that actually designates it's this area here that the public can walk, and the path that cuts through the property to that area. So you can go down there for viewing or whatever and
And this is on the Lees or Leach property?
leach.
Leach, so between the buildings there?
Yes, yes. There was.
Not the boat ramp, not that little boat ramp,
No,
that's town
no,
property,
no,
right?
North of that.
Yeah, okay, I know where you mean, huh, I didn't know.
Yeah, because I was curious, when the discussion was happening, I wasn't familiar enough. I went down and spent like an hour walking around one morning, walked down on all the docks and checked everything out, because I hadn't been down in a long time to really focus and see where things were. And she was mentioning a spot to put the bike rack, and I'm like, I had no idea where she was actually talking about. But it was, and this I got off my phone, off of yeah. Public access to WAF, open to the public, dawn to dusk, Mass Department, DEP, Waterways Regulation Program.
Now, are you
And-
looking at a picture of the sign? That's a picture of the sign there.
The sign ironically is torn down right now.
Oh,
I don't know whether it came down because of some safety concerns that are down there at this time or what. But yeah, I was like, okay, I was trying to envision the
right.
landing itself, and I took some pictures of the landing itself, and then I went over and to look at that area. But that was I had Googled about public landings and found that picture on my, and zoomed right in, actually.
Because I know that I have heard that when wharfs are built over Commonwealth-owned water, that the public has access to those wharfs, that they're not,
Not, yeah,
But I'm not-
it's
I'm
all
not
spelled
sure
out
how
in the license agreement that with, in this case, it's, in this particular case, that's one of the conditions of the license agreement that she has, that it has this pathway and so forth, and it has a little diagram of it that shows where the pathway is supposed to be, and then when you get to the end, it shows, like, this is where the public can access.
so conceivably, the town, because this is not a landing property,
It's not a landing property, it's not a town-owned property. It's owned by,
the abutter or the,
the property owner would be Eve Leach, and that but through the Commonwealth, through the license, there's the public access through there.
so depending on how safe it was or wasn't, there'd be an issue about liability.
That,
Should we be encouraging people should the
Well,
town
this-
be encouraging people to walk down there?
the sign is saying that you have the right to walk down there, and that's all the license gives anybody, is permission to walk down there. And it doesn't give the town, you'd have to file through the Commonwealth and everything else to get permission to do anything, and even in that, it's not allowed in her license. It specifies no structures, nothing.
Specifically.
Right, but you could,
And the liability there, it does address the liability. It's like a case of, because the Commonwealth's requiring this for a license, it's not, you go down there, there's no liability for her.
okay, so you could sit and eat a sandwich?
I assume so, if you wanted to sit on the ground and eat a sandwich.
Could you carry a chair and sit on a chair?
Doesn't say anything about that, so I suppose you could, one of those little fold-up chairs and go down and sit there and eat a
Conceivably, you
sandwich.
could stand on a rickety, rotten bulkhead and fish.
May I, I'm not quite following this. Are we talking about the bench that was discussed at the previous meeting?
Yes.
No, we're talking about the.
Well, the
bike
bike rack, we
Bike
talked about a bike rack, and then
This is-
somebody had mentioned to put it over there on that other property, because there was a right-of-way. And that right-of-way is very specific that nothing can be put on
Yeah,
it.
but
So I'm
even-
saying that's not something that we could even do anyway.
Yeah,
Right,
well, it seems like, not, in my view, it doesn't sound like a good idea to me in the first place. It is primarily private property. I mean, we have other issues with that property as a town,
yep,
and they're muddy. And and the idea of putting a bike rack on that side of the road, this would be the west side of the road.
Mhm.
I don't think that idea has any merit. Speaking, I'm not a voter here. so-
Right.
But is the committee still interested in discussing a bike rack and a bench in another section of the landing area, the point area?
Now, I don't think we've brought up the idea of a bench.
Unless it was offered, wasn't it?
No, what was offered was a bike
Bike
rack.
Yep,
I think I mentioned in the discussion that I would like to see a bench down there, just a little, like a park bench or whatever,
Right.
for people to sit and view the water or
That's right.
something. There is that grassy area that's there, and, I mean, on the other hand, in looking at it, it's where the grassy area is, because of all the parking that's there, it's not like you're out on the edge of the water and you have a beautiful
Right.
view of
Right.
You
something.
gotta go down to that little corner there.
Yeah,
Which is the
it's
water.
not, that's one of the reasons why I went down and looked around myself and took some pictures.
Right.
I see the spot that she was referencing, the person that offered the
bike rack.
Kristen, when she offered the bike rack. And actually, that almost looks to me like we could make it into 2 more parking spaces, whether they're designated for, that whoever were to park in them, if we don't make it a bike rack, we could put at least 1, if not 2 parking spaces there.
I think they get used as parking spaces. People park there.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing, it's like if it could either be public parking or we could designate it, like, I don't know, especially in the summertime, I know I've been down there and I see Chris Leonard's truck and stuff, but there's usually a few more town employees that, in the summertime, that he'll have other guys that work with him that are out on the boats and stuff. And where they park and stuff, I don't know whether they have adequate parking, like those could be designated, say, for the town employees, or something of that nature, but
Yes.
they're really not designated as parking spots, but probably should be, and either public parking, or if not public parking, like, I don't know whether a fisherman, one of the business owners wants to lease it, lease those two. Because it is a little awkward to get to them, because unless you know that they're there, you have to go down that right away.
Right. Okay, well, I think that since it's not really.
It's not
it's in
something
the butter,
for,
I think we ought to leave the Leach property off
Off
our
the-
agenda.
yes,
And I do know I don't know, 7 years ago, I researched the bridge, what I'll call a bridge abutment, where the bridge used to be, and spoke with the town clerk, looked at old town meeting records when the bridge was taken down, and the bridge abutment on the other side is under a long-term lease agreement with the back eddy. So the town realized there's value here, and they wanted to use it as part of they use it as, I think they've got a dumpster sitting on it, and maybe some capital equipment sitting on it. But back then, nobody ever created any particular agreement about the bridge abutment on this side. And there was pretty heated arguments between the then property owner of the Lobster House, or whatever it was, Lee's Lobster Building,
Lee's Wharf, yep.
and the abutter on the other side, who were both claiming that the abutment had been abandoned when the road was abandoned, even though there's nothing in the town meeting documents that suggest that. But they were saying that we both own to the middle of that. And in negotiation with the Point Parking Task Force, which included all the business owners and a lot of the property owners that were right around there, 2 or 3 years ago, it was kind of agreed that an effective way of parking a lot of the employees that come there every week from the oyster business would be for them to park 2 or 3 abreast and park each other in on that spot. And I thought that was sort of the understanding at that point. I heard something different at our last meeting about some sense of who actually owns that property. And it's not really a landing commission issue. It's,
Right.
except we're in a butter, because we definitely don't own it.
Right.
But my opinion is the town owns it, and what I was looking at was the idea that that big old sign that is no longer legible that says
Something about underwater
underground,
wires.
no anchoring underground cables, which actually don't exist, even though I spoke with the electric company and who refused to update the sign, but said, oh, no, we still want to maintain ownership. And I was like, really? Anyhow, a bench could go there. It might be a little tricky walking around the pickup trucks, and I had spoke with the highway department about rebuilding the stone abutment that would actually make it easier for 3 trucks to park abreast there, because they typically park 2. So I will just encourage the select board as a neighbor to get that clear about who really owns this, so that we don't have a big to-do about it again years from now, because it sounded at our last meeting that the abutter thought that they owned it. And maybe they do, I could well be wrong, but I think in Mr. Leach's serious research about that, he was pretty clear that was public property. Do you know where I'm speaking of?
Yeah, I do. I don't see an appetite to take this on at the select board level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just that the select board would be disinterested. There's got to be some driver for this. This debate, we'll call it, has been going on for a long time.
Right.
Probably since the bridge disappeared, yeah.
And it hasn't been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it takes to resolve it, other than people going to court, I guess, and letting a court decide it, but that's really not the optimal thing to do. You'd like to think there was some other way to do that, but I guess what the select board might, something, if a problem emerges here, we might get interested in it,
Right.
but there's
Well,
there's no problem per se, other than the general problem of not enough parking in that
Right.
area. I mean,
it seems as though it's being used by the fishermen in the way that we talked about 3 years ago, and that seems to be an optimal way of maximizing parking, because they park each other in, because they all go out on the boat together, so they leave together. So that seems to me that part of it's working.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because for years, the fishermen always just parked in the landing.
Right. And some will continue to do that, and then it just becomes an issue for the people who live up Main Road of where's parking happening. So,
I'm sorry, I didn't get the significance of the last remark.
well, I've just heard from property owners along the road that there become safety issues and issues about where the general public, where the lunch-eating public ends up parking, is they end up parking back up Main Road, because most of the landing parking is filled up with fishermen's parking or whoever else got there sooner. So that at moments apparently becomes an issue for people blocking driveways.
Oh, it's blocking, I was wondering what this lunch thing was. You're talking about the blocking of driveways?
Yeah.
Yes, I've heard that, and
Yeah,
there are some issues there where people park where there are driveways.
mm-hmm,
And I don't think there's a lot of those situations. I mean, I know the point, I live there.
yeah,
And I did have a resident call me once about that,
mm-hmm,
but there's no immediate solution because people can park there and it could be illegal and they might get ticketed and,
Right.
I mean, I don't know how you solve that problem, really.
yeah, no, then it's not our problem to solve.
I mean, where I live is across the post office.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who park in front of my driveway, if I can't get in or out, while they're at the post office.
Oh, I'm just going to be a minute, don't worry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but my view is, I chose to live there. My wife and I chose to live there, and we kind of like having all these people around. It's kind of a busy place. Some people wouldn't like that, but we do. And it doesn't last very long. You know, I've never had to wait very long into my driveway nor get out of it.
You
So,
probably know most of the people.
yeah,
Hi, how are you?
well, yeah, not all of them, but yeah, I mean, this is, I don't know what the problem is here with this driveway parking blocking thing is. I don't know what,
I was just talking about the possibility, if we thought that it would be nice to have a bench, it could be on the bridge abutment that's right on the water there.
yeah, okay, well, that's where,
That's all.
yeah, then we got up to this other thing.
But
yeah.
I don't know how you would sign that and for it to be clear. And if the town did that, they would sort of be saying they could do that. And I don't know, the town may not care about providing that as a resource. Maybe the town's fine with people just walking around.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I don't-
like,
I don't think there's,
originally I was thinking, you know, there's that grassy area, and that's where the bench came in, is I was thinking that would be a nice area for, but reality is, when I went down there and looked around, like I say, that grassy area, you're kind of between the building, the parking lot, it's really not a nice, enjoyable spot for a bench. So,
no, it's not.
yeah, you
The
know,
bike
and
rack is not a
basically
bad
talking-
idea.
it's,
Abutting the Haynes property, basically.
yeah, between where the parking is
Where
and the
the anchor
Haynes.
used to be, more or less. or
Yeah, in that
strip.
section there, and it's not a bench area.
Yeah.
It's, you know, like I say, it's like you're sitting in a parking lot, so,
Could well be in
I'm
that
kinda like
grassy
to-
area instead of, because when we think of bike racks, we think about something about the size of this table with slots, and the bikes all park in. I mean, conceivably, along the border of the Haynes property, in that grassy area, there could be a nice-looking rail or pipe, 2-inch in diameter pipe or something that people could lean their bikes onto and walk. In other words, the bike could just sort of stretch out that way.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. I know somebody indicated to me that I'm not a biker, so I don't know, that they don't like their bikes in the grass or whatever. I don't know why. Like I say, I have no idea. I'm not a biker, so that was indicated. I'm like, could be, I have no
Boy,
idea.
that's a well-taken-care-of bike.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, there's a lot of bikers who go to the point as part of their ride,
Yep.
and they're there to turn around and come back. It's not, I don't see a lot of bikers stopping there for any reason. It's just,
People aren't biking down to buy an oyster and a beer.
I don't think so. No,
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
These are athletic people who are out there to,
When they're on a bike ride, they're on a ride.
they're on a mission.
All right.
But
I
I've
do
seen
know-
them, I've seen them go down, I just don't see people bikers congregating down there very often.
And as a resident down there, is that something you'd like to encourage?
Probably not. I mean, I think the residents would be nervous about that. It just creates more congestion on the point.
Right.
Well, like Kristen had offered the bike rack, and she's, you know, like she said, if we want it, let her know. If we don't want it, that's fine too. She offered it, but, to donate it, but if we don't want it, we can just leave it at that, so.
All right. Well, I think we've taken care of business not anticipated time of posting. Something that I thought would be useful to know, because there hasn't been a clear reporting of it. Could you get together a treasurer's report?
Sure.
Years ago, Lucy Tabbitt was able to tell us how much money we were spending a year compared to how much money we were taking in a year. And given that we're starting to take on some expenses that we haven't taken on before, it would be, I really have no idea how much is in our bank account.
Well, you know, I don't either. What I do know is there's only been a couple of bills that have come from the mowing company. Anything that I've seen, I submitted,
Right.
and,
Well, it would be nice to know.
I've only gotten
Because-
one for Porta John.
And we have,
Yeah.
yeah, porta-johns, and we'll have the
And
signs. And they're gonna install the signs?
Yes, yep.
I don't know what the scoop is on the Porta-John. I've only seen one bill on that.
Oh, that was something not, when should I pull the Porta-John? The end of October?
And the weather gets too cold.
Too cold to,
Yeah, probably end.
End of October, yeah, Columbus Day is usually the last hurrah for a lot of people being outside, doing that type of stuff. So,
Okay.
Where is this located?
it's.
the head.
At the head,
the head.
behind the kayak shop.
Oh, wow.
There's a little picket fence
Oh.
enclosure that we built to enclose it, so,
That's probably why I've never seen it.
well, if you drive through, you would probably notice it.
Yeah.
And my sense is that, given that the kayak shop is going to become more erratic as far as when they're there, we should just take the lock off it and see what happens. Because there's going to be less evening kids eating ice cream down there, so my sense
I'll
is.
tell you, the one at Hicks Bridge is used regularly by service guys in town, you know, the oil guys, the gas guys, the Spectrum, or not Spectrum guys.
Yeah, I
and
see- I
It's
see
really
trucks
used, but
parked
that's
at the
very
lot.
visible, you know,
Yep,
the one at the head's not as visible, so I
yeah,
don't
but
know.
it's okay for it to get used. I mean,
Yeah,
especially the
yeah.
elder male population, we like to know.
But it's your practice to take it away for the winter months, is that it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, yep. Yep.
When they had the fire there that started at the outhouse, was that a town outhouse? Or porta potty?
When was that? You mean the kayak shop burned?
Right. It started with the porta potty.
Oh,
Somebody
really?
started the porta potty on fire, yeah.
Really?
I was gonna
That's
say,
not
years,
easy
was
to
that,
get Polyethylene burning.
was
Yeah.
that years ago, like for Halloween, or, I remember years back,
Yeah.
thankfully.
I don't remember if it was related to Halloween, but I'm gonna say it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Within probably 4 or 5 years of when Carl and Sam started
Yeah.
running the kayak shop there.
Yep. All right, so next, we don't have any particularly pressing business. Do we need to meet in
Is
a month?
that Route 88?
Yes,
Motorcycles?
Wow.
Yeah, it's still an east wind.
Yeah, they make noise.
Southeast,
They
yeah.
really do.
yeah. It's interesting, because I live about halfway between 88 and Main Road, and where my house is, and you hear it, yeah.
So,
I had no
should we
idea either.
schedule a meeting for next month? And then, if we have no movement on the Hicks Bridge thing, because in some ways, the issues about moving ahead are as much a select board issue as they are a landing commission issue, as far as this easement issue. I suppose we could just schedule a meeting. Oh, because we have to decide about the parking fine structure and everything else. Let's have another meeting.
Before October 7th?
No. Today is
24th?
24th, so how about October 22nd? How would that be?
I'll be out of town, but I don't think you should be held up because of that, since I'm not a voting member.
Right, but we could also push it to the 29th, which might be better for me. Yeah, how about if we push it to the 29th? Would that work for folks?
Works
I
for
have an
me.
appointment at 4,
So that doesn't work for you.
no. And the next day I have a meeting also, but the day before I don't. But the select board are probably using that. You meeting on the 28th?
How about November 5th?
You meet Mondays, right?
We will be meeting on the 28th, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about November? Ooh,
Election day?
ha,
No, we can't do that, right?
could, but
Yeah, it's not a town election, so we could, but it's gonna be a crazy day.
Oh, really? It's only town elections?
It's not,
supposed to-
yeah, it's
Oh.
town elections, the boards can't.
right. Okay, so the 29th was no good for you, but the 22nd was okay. And then our select board liaison can watch us on YouTube. Oh, boy.
So the 22nd,
Yes,
4 o'clock?
yes.
As soon as I come back from being out of town, I will go right to the site, look at what happened.
Oh,
at the
you
meeting.
mean you're not
Get it on
going to
your
interrupt
phone
your...
live, you know, probably.
Well, I don't think I can make it.
Okay. Come on, phone. So that's at 4 o'clock. On, oh, I'm totally screwing this up.
The 22nd, you said, right?
Oh, I didn't, this is, it's the 22nd, yes.
22nd, 4 o'clock. Works for me.
Okay. Could we,
Entertain a motion to adjourn?
Second?
all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.